Hi, I'm Stuart J. Pearlman, and I want to welcome you to Stuart J's Lens, the tales of small business in McKinney. I hope you enjoyed today's tale. It comes straight from small business in McKinney.
I was born in Dallas. I'm a native Texan. My husband was in the Navy, so I've actually lived in a lot of different places. My favorite was probably San Diego.
Great.
We were there for 7 years. And I myself spent some time in the Navy. And so I've been to Japan and Spain and England and Italy, plus all over the United States.
Wow.
Yes. Well, back then, this was, a long time ago before they had women on ships. And so what they did was they sent the men either stayed in the United States and then they went to a ship, and the women were in the United States and out of the United States. They called it INCONUS and ALCONUS.
Just not on ships.
Right, because they're, in my era, so to speak, there were no women on ships. I was a chief petty officer when I got out. That's an E7, that's middle management in the Navy.
And what were your responsibilities?
I was a legalman, and basically that is the paralegal. It was a lot of fun, and it was a time that I really enjoyed, and even being a Navy wife is something that I still kind of miss because of the community, but I'm off in another direction now. So I learned to knit in my 20s, and then I learned to weave in my 30s. And then in my 40s, I learned to spin. And so in my 50s, I was raising rabbits and for their fur, not for meat. And I had about 14 of them, I guess. They had a separate air-conditioned building in the backyard. And I had the opportunity to buy 2 alpacas. And I said to my husband, I want to live in the country, I want to live on a farm, and I want to raise fiber animals. I want to start at the very beginning, where you shear the animal and go from there. I actually had animals on layaway all over the city. It was kind of silly. Of course I had my rabbits. Then I had gone and gotten 2 alpacas up in Missouri, and I had a goat out in Flower Mound and 5 goats in Midlothian and 2 goats in Tyler that I had purchased, and they were being boarded by their prior owners until I could come. And once we got out here and were established, I went tooling around like Noah's Ark and picked up all my animals. And that's how we started, with 2 alpacas and about 8 goats.
And a dozen bunnies.
And a dozen bunnies,
Yeah.
yes. It wasn't long after that my husband announced that we were also going to raise sheep. So that year, I drove back to Missouri, from where all good animals come, and bought him 3 Shetland ewes for his birthday.
What are you going to get him for Father's Day this weekend?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
A camel?
No camels, nothing else.
Have you always been an animal person?
Somewhat, but not to this degree, that's for sure.
So this passion wasn't driven by the love for animals, it's driven by the
love for fiber.
The love for fiber.
The love for fiber, for the wool, for spinning, for the fiber crafts. My kids are grown now, they're in their 30s, and they will tell you that there was never a time that I didn't have knitting needles in my hand. And I've made sweater upon sweater for them. But when I learned to spin, that was it. I was hooked. I love knitting, I love weaving. I've done a lot of both. But when I learned to spin, that was when I wanted to get back to the beginning, to the end. I wanted to not only harvest the fiber, but that I would have more than I would need, and so that I wanted to process it and sell it to other spinners. I think that we need to kind of get back to that, to knowing where our clothes come from and valuing them more. These are not throwaway clothes. The things that I make out of the fabric that I weave do not get thrown away. They get passed down from generation to generation, as was done in the 1800s. I wash all my fibers myself. And so they're soft and they're supple, and people love them. And spinners love them. And I've even gone so far as to create my own blends that I'm selling to hand spinners that they love. And it's fun for me, but it's also a business, and it's also an awakening for a lot of people. A fiber arts life refers to people who knit, weave, spin, crochet, felt, and what I'm offering them is an opportunity to buy their fiber from me, buy their yarn from me, walk out in the barnyard and meet the animal that provided that wool.
And do you name the animals?
The animals do have names.
So do you know who you're wearing?
I absolutely do.
Who are you wearing right now?
Well, right now I'm wearing cotton knit because it's 105 degrees outside. We did have some people tell one of our neighbors, gosh, are those people across the road raising kangaroos? They just don't know what to think of the alpacas. And I had someone else come by and say, hey, we heard you're opening a wild animal preserve here. I'm like, no, the wildest thing we have is an alpaca.
If you think you have a story to tell, send me an email. But I have to tell you up front, it better be good.